Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. At the time of recording, it's Saturday, October 18th, 7 o'clock at night, but this video will be premiering in the morning on Sunday. This is our weekly video where we do a week look ahead and payment guesstimate for Ulti and SLTY. Ulti is our YieldMax Ultra Option Income Strategy Fund. SLTY is the short version of that, Ultra Short Option Income Strategy Fund. Before we get into it, reminder, I'm on X at ETF_Inspector1. I post thank yous to people supporting the channel, like the most recent one, Phenom Yar. He has given to the channel before, and so this is yet another time from him, so thank you very much. I also post when videos are premiering, in case you like to catch the live chat, reposting, distributions, all that good stuff. So, all right, so we'll take a quick look at just how the week went, and if you follow these at all, you know it was a rough week to be sure. So here's our week for Ulti. On Monday, opening up at 538. At one point, we were as high as 545 on Tuesday, and then we just downhill from there. So for starters, you got Wednesday is now X day. So Tuesday is declaration day. Wednesday is X day, so the price will automatically drop the difference of the distribution. And then Thursday's payday, so that shouldn't have an effect. You would think maybe it would have people buying into the fund based on getting their distributions, but in any case, the market had a rough week, and so Ulti's going to have a rough week. So dropping, getting as low as 510 at one point on Friday before recovering back to 515. So on the week, they dropped 4.36%. Obviously, that's not a good thing. I did run a calculation. Everything's been updated, but on Friday, the average underlying within Ulti dropped 3.3%. Whereas Ulti itself only dropped 1.9%. So this isn't an Ulti problem. It was the holdings within Ulti, and clearly the strategy within Ulti actually helped it to go down less than what the underlyings did. So if you had just held all the underlyings within the fund instead of Ulti, you would have dropped worse than the 1.9% drop on Friday. So I'm probably going to start incorporating that into the daily video just to show you the weighted average of the move of the underlyings compared to the fund itself. And then we'll also talk about SLTY just a little bit in this video. We are dropping our coverage, not dropping as in getting rid of, but minimizing, reducing our coverage of SLTY. But in any case, they just about flat on the week, up almost 0.5%. And that is with paying out that 46-cent dividend. That's where you see it dropping out right there. So had they had not paid that, they'd be up decently on the week. So they were able to maintain throughout the week, which is not great considering the fact that the market was down this week. So they basically stayed flat, but we'll take a look at them as well. Now, we'll start off with Ulti. That one gets the majority of the coverage. And first off, we'll look at the trades. So from the 13th on Monday through the 17th on Friday, we had approximately 300 trades. They had a debit on their options trading on Monday, 7.3 million, or a loss, another loss of 35.5 million Tuesday. They made 924,000 on Wednesday, made another 12.8 million on Thursday, and made another 32 million on Friday to actually end the week in the positive on their options trading by just under $3 million. So if we were to use that for our income, just based on, or our estimate based on the income, they'd be paying out, that's not 47 cents, that's not 4.7, that's 0.0, oh my goodness, 0.47 cents. So a half a cent. That's clearly not going to be the distribution. So next, they tell us to take a look at the IV. Before we flip the page, since we went through the daily profits and losses on options trading. We'll also talk about the daily changes in market value. This is just the holdings of the shares, whether they went up or down each week. So Monday, we started the week off great, up 170 million. That was recovering from the previous Friday. Up another 2.8 million on Tuesday, up another 53 million on Wednesday. We were having a wonderful week. And then the market, $161 million drop in value on Thursday, and another 89, almost 90 million Friday, causing them to overall drop $25 million in value of their underlying shares throughout the course of the week. So we're going to switch over now and see what our IV estimate tells us. The way we do this is I've got a weighting system here, so it's not the overall weight within the fund. It's just comparing one underlying to the next. It leaves out the cash. It leaves out the First American government funds. So it's kind of just what we're trading options on, bringing in income. All right, so we've got the weighting here, and then the 30-day IV. I like to use Market Chameleon. So just go over here, type in something from Ulti. Well, I type in all of them, right? And then just enter the 30-day IV right next to it. All right, so a firm holding is just under 2% of the holdings. It's 87.3% IV. That's an increase from last week. Bitmine Immersions, another increase to 113.8% with 3.7% of the money. Cipher Mining, almost 1.8% of the money dropped, but it's still very high, 159+%. Centene Corp, we don't own any shares in them, but we do trade options. So we know that plays into their calculation. We don't have the exact calculation. This is just how we do a ballpark. But it's just nice to know what the IV is. That implied volatility is what IV is. So 64.6%, and that is a decrease from the previous week. Coinbase is one of our bigger holdings, 5.8% of the money. It did drop last week to 70.6%, or I shouldn't say last week, over the course of this week. 5.7% of the money is in CoreWeave. That increased to 95% IV. Figma's got 4.1% of the money. They dropped, but still over 100% on the IV. Galaxy Digital made a huge jump up over 100. So we know that's helping with our IV estimate, but just don't really have the way to weight that IV into our calculation. But it's Hims and Hers, 5.2% of the money, increased to 124.2%. Robinhood, almost 6% of the money. It decreased to 74.4%. Iron Limited, 132.8%. IV is an increase, and they have almost 3.5% of the money in them. Another 3.3% of the money is in Lucid, and they dropped to 82.2%. Lululemon is our third and final put spread, where we don't own any shares, but we're just keeping an eye on the implied volatility. It dropped this week to 41.5. MP Materials Corp's got 3.7% of the money and dropped to 96.9. Now, in general, Ulti kind of goes for the 85% range, so anything above 85% is going to obviously be helping with our calculation. Strategy, formerly MicroStrategy, 3.2% of the money increased to just under 70% IV. Palantir dropped to 71.4% with 6.8% of the money. They may be the largest holding within the fund. We'll take a quick, nope, Rocket Lab is. I forgot. We knew that from last week. Pony AI, 3.6% of the money, dropped to 103.5% IV. Another drop, but still over 100, 118.9% on Quantum with more than 4% of the money. Rigetti, 6.4%, increased to 148.3% IV. These are some enormous numbers. Rocket Lab, 7.6% of the money, the largest holding within the fund. There's almost $200 million in there. 111.1% is an increase from last week. Rocket Companies, just over 5% of the money, decreased to 73.6%. NewScale Power, 6.8%, another large holding, 132.4%. That really brings up our calculation. SoundHound AI, just under 4.7% of the money, increased to 123.9%. Symbiotic dropped to 81.9% with 3.5% of the money. And finally, Upstart 3.1% dropped to 108.1%. So all in all, we had 10 underlyings that increased in implied volatility, 13 that decreased, and then out of our put spreads, 1 went up and 2 went down. In general, the average weighting amongst these is 4.55%. So when we take all those numbers, we run this nice big calculation, and it actually shows an increase in our implied volatility. Last week it was 99.18. This week it's 103.05. So we're getting an enormous amount of implied volatility, which equates to very high premiums on options. All right, we take that along with our closing price on Friday to come up with our IV estimate, and what we get is 10.21 cents. Now, we take that information, we take a look at how things went through the week, work everything together, and finally come up with a guesstimate. Do I think they're going to pay 10 cents this week? I don't. Not with the share price dropping so quickly the way it did. I don't think they want to keep that speed in the downward direction going. But I'm torn, even though I remember what I put here. You can see it right there. I put 8.5 cents. So that would be at 85% implied volatility. I know they like to shoot for paying that even when they're getting below that. Now, when they're getting above it, we've only had a couple of weeks where that's the case, so it's hard to tell what they're trying to do. The thing to remember, though, is as we are receiving more premium with these high IV, we're also having to spend more when we're buying our protective puts. So that's going to eat up more of the money brought in. So now the real question is, are they going to break under 9 cents for the first time in a very long time? So part of me says yes and part of me says no. I'm going to leave my 8.5 cent guesstimate here, but with the IV being so high, don't be surprised if they keep it over 9. All right, so that's that's just, it's a guesstimate. It is what it is. So next up, we're going to take a look at our holdings. Now, we're having issues. I've been talking with a bunch of the other creators, and everyone's having the same issue. We've got emails into YieldMax, and the problem is with this new website that looks so cool, it's not updating. So we're having lots of problems. If you caught my Friday video, when you download the intraday trades, instead of it coming up as a download that you can manipulate, it comes up as like this spreadsheet. You'd think, oh, it's just a Google Doc, but look, I can't click any. Oh boy, can't click anything. I can't highlight anything. I can't copy and paste, nothing. So that made that very difficult for Friday's video. So then the follow-up, usually by 8:30 at night, the holdings download comes out and everything's updated. So at least by Saturday, we should definitely have it. This should have been done by Friday evening, but now it's Saturday evening. And when we click the download for the holdings, this is what should happen with the trades, and it should come up in a file just like that we can manipulate. But here's the problem. Look at the date. It's not updating. So we're still showing options that have expired. So I can only do what I can do. So this week LookAhead's not going to be at the quality level that I'm used to providing for you, and I'm not happy with that. I was hesitant to even make the video, but I still want to give you guys as much information as I can, even if it's not as good as normal. So when we look at the options for the week, we're still going to be able to talk about them. They're just not, things aren't going to be perfect. So we don't know if people bought into or sold out of the fund on Friday to know if this outstanding shares changed. It's hard to tell if we know our assets under management is not exactly right, because we're going to have gotten out of all these options that expire on the 17th. So those dollar amounts will go away. They're going to get replaced with dollar amounts to go along with the new options. We don't know what any of those amounts were as of closing, so things aren't perfect here. But we'll do what we can. All right, so Affirm Holdings, we do know. So I've put in orange ones that did trade on Friday. Everything else is already correct. So when we scroll down Friday, we're going to basically kind of go back and forth between pages to just look at the spot where they sold the calls, just so we have some sort of information. So Affirm Holdings sold calls at $75 for this week, with the stock closing at $67.90. They're about 10.5% out of the money. Bitmine Immersion sold calls at $55, expiring Friday. They're 10.3% out of the money, closing under $50 for the share price. Cash and other, here's another small manipulation I made. I took the number from the start of the day, Friday, and I added to the cash the amount of money we received for selling our shares of HUD 8 Corp and the amount of money we received from trading options. So again, that won't be perfect, because if people bought into or sold out of the fund, that would be affected as well. Just trying to get as close as we can. 268 million in there, estimated, we'll say. Cipher Mining, we've got calls sold at 22 and 22, 17+% out of the money. Centene Corp is a put spread. They sold the 36s. They're 2% in the money at the close on Friday. Now Coinbase, we know these 1017s are gone. So we've got calls sold at 352.50 that are almost 5% out of the money. And then Coin also sold calls at 342.50. But we're not going to be able to talk about percentages and things like that. They also sold some puts at 27 to help pay for their $30 puts. Next, we have CoreWeave. Same thing. We're going to have to switch the page. And so they've sold calls at 143. You can see on both those lines. And they sold puts to help pay for their other puts at 110. We've got Figma. Figma sold calls at $61. They closed at $56.84. They're 7.3% out of the money. Galaxy Digital is another put spread. We don't own any shares. They closed this trade out, and they sold puts at $37.50, buying at $36. Hims and Hers is next. All right, so we know that all of those 1017s are closed out. We've got calls sold at 65 that are 30.5% out of the money, with the drop to under 50. And where else did we sell calls? Excuse me. 54 and 58. They also sold puts at 42 to help purchase the puts at 46 and 47. We've got Robinhood Markets at 129.91 on Fridays. They sold calls at 140. They're 7.7% out. Iron Limited closing at $60.72. They already had some calls sold at 72, 18.5% out. And then we've also sold at 62. Lucid Group closed at 1963. They've got calls sold at 22.50. They're 14.6% out of the money. And I accidentally called Galaxy the last put spread. Lululemon is the last put spread. So they've already made this trade. Puts are sold at 165, 1.4% out of the money. MP Materials Corp closed at $80.79. Calls are sold at $89 and $91.50. 10 and 13+% out of the money. Strategy, $289.87 was the closing price. Calls are sold at $292.50 and $305. 0.9 and 5.2% out of the money. So they are not very well set up for an upward movement in strategy. If it trades sideways or down, then they got the most premium they could. But if it goes up, half of their options will be capped right away. Now, of course, they won't stay that way. They'll close them out and roll them so that their shares can increase in value. Palantir closed at 178.15. Puts are sold at, or calls are sold at 185, 3.8% out of the money. Pony AI closing at 19.29. They have calls sold at 21 and 21.50. 21.50. Oh, actually, I messed up. We don't need to talk about any of these. These all expired on 10/17. We've got to switch the page. They sold calls at 20, 20, 20, and then they sold puts at 16 to help pay for their 17.50 puts. So their calls are sold at 20 with the close at 19.29. That's not very far out of the money. Quantum computing, again, we've got to flip the page for some of them, but we do have some $20 calls sold 9% out of the money, closing at 18.33. What else did they sell? 19.50s on the calls, and they sold some $15 puts to help pay for their 16.50 puts. So I really like this strategy. They're doing a whole lot more of it this week, where they sell puts to help pay for the protective puts, so it's not giving up as much of their income. Okay, we've got Rigetti, closed at 46.38. They've got calls sold at 51, just about 10% out. They also made some trades on Friday, selling at 47 and 50. And again, selling puts at 37 to purchase the $42 and $43 puts. I'm hoping that makes sense to everybody. I know not everyone is an options trader, so and I'm not going to explain the details of calls and puts, but generally when you buy a put, you are protecting your share price, so you had to spend some money. And when you buy an option, money goes out in the first place. When you sell an option, you collect money in the first place. So when they're purchasing these puts to protect your shares, it's basically like buying an insurance policy, but it's expensive. So if you sell one even further away, it helps generate some income to knock down the expense of buying your insurance policy. Okay, Rocket Companies closed at, I think, did I talk about Rocket Lab? Maybe I didn't. 66.27. I didn't. Glad we went back. Sold calls at 67 and 67.50. They also sold puts at 52 and 53 to help pay for the puts at 59 and 60. Now we're on Rocket Companies. They closed at $16.66. And their calls are sold at $17. So they're only 34 cents out of the money. New Scale Power, we've got a little bit already rolled. $57 calls are 28.8% out of the money with the $44 closing price, but we've got some more. We sold calls at 46 as well and sold puts at 36. Soundhound AI closed at 19.02. We've got calls sold at 22.50 that are 18% out of the money, and we've got to flip the page. Calls sold at 20.50 and puts sold at 15.50. Symbotic closed at 68.52. Everything here is already closed and expired. Just don't have the download yet. So Symbotic sold calls at 69 and 71. They sold puts at 55 and 57 to help pay for their protective puts at 61 and 63. Last but not least, Upstart closed at 46.50. Their calls are sold at 49.50, so they're $3 out of the money, and they've sold puts at 39 to pay for the $43 protective puts. Okay, so without knowing whether people bought into or out of the fund, these numbers obviously could be wrong, but let's say they didn't change. There's just under $3.2 billion in assets under management within the fund. And again, that NAV is going to change if any of these numbers change, but we do know it's going to be very close to the closing price of $5.15, probably within a penny, one direction or the other. This past week, they paid 9.08 cents per share. And again, I'm not able to talk about these, how far in or out of the money the calls are sold, because half of them aren't even on the page. We just had to flip pages to talk about them. So, again, I really don't like putting out a poor quality content, but I want to give you as much information as we have available to us. Next, we're going to go for Salty, but we're going to get through it a whole lot faster. All right, so we'll start off. They made about 110 trades throughout the week, making $9,000 on Monday, losing $124,000 Tuesday, making $245,000 Wednesday, another $32,000 on Thursday, and then losing $322,000 on Friday, for an overall loss on the week of $159,000. Obviously, you can't disperse negative $159,000 amongst shares. It'd be a negative number, so that doesn't work. Next, we go to the IV estimate. When we look at the holdings, we've got an Advanced Micro Device went down this past week. ASTS went up over 100. BitDeer up well over 100. Circle Internet Group down, but still nice and high at 87. Similar for Enphase, down but high at almost 90. GitLab dropped as well to 53. IonQ jumped up over 114. Kratos Defense down but still all around 85. Lemonade down but still almost 90. Nebius Group down but still over 100. Reddit was unchanged. They just got added this week. RH dropped to 66%. Tesla dropped to 59%, and United Airlines dropped to 45%. So out of those, only 3 went up in implied volatility, 10 dropped, and 1 stayed the same. That did lower the underlying 30-day IV weighted average from 97.2 last week down to 89.52 this week. We combined that with the closing price on Friday to come up with our IV estimate. And it comes out to 67.78 cents. Now, from there, we got to guess what they're going to pay. Now, last week, they paid 46.1 cents with a higher share price and a higher implied volatility. So we do not think that they're going to pay 67 when both numbers dropped, and they paid 46 last week. So we got to come up with our guesstimate. Now, like we talked about it when we looked, they actually did well, paying out 46 cents and basically staying the same. So they're going to be, I think, close to that. I kind of think my guesstimate might be a little high. But with them having an implied volatility in the high 80s, I don't know that they're going to pay much lower than 50 cents. Let's go. Let's see what 48 cents looks like. 62. I'll say 48 cents. That'll be my guesstimate. Sorry, let me get a drink so I stop coughing. All right, next we're just going to take a look at where puts are sold on each underlying. We start off with AMD, and we got to switch pages because the holdings didn't work. Got to go to the 17th. AMD sold puts at 222.50. ASTS or AST Space Mobile selling puts at 79. BitDeer, same thing. We got to switch pages. Selling puts at 22. Circle Internet Group, we've already got them on the page. Sold puts at 124. Enphase Energy sold puts at 35. GitLab selling puts at 44.50. IonQ sold their puts at 63. They're actually already in the money. Kratos Defense sold their puts at 86. Again, they're in the money. Lemonade, we got to switch pages. Sold their puts at 46. Nebius Group, switch it again. Sold puts at 105. Reddit, they've got their puts still on this page. 190 is the sold price on those puts. RH, oh, didn't switch. Selling puts at 167.50. Tesla, switch the page, sold puts at $420, and United Airlines sold puts at 100. And again, they are in the money to start the week. Now, with the downloads not working, again, we don't know if people bought into or out of the fund. But we're saying roughly around $17.6 million in assets under management, 450,000 outstanding shares, and a NAV. It's going to be somewhere below 39.37 because this one share price always trades a little higher than the NAV. So it's probably not too far off. Maybe it's in the 39.20s. Again, they paid 46.1 cents per share this past week. And both of these declare on Tuesdays now, where they used to declare on Wednesdays, and they pay on Thursdays instead of Fridays. All right, so that's all I have for you. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you guys sticking with me. Hopefully we can get these issues cleared up with YieldMax and their website. I do have emails in to the people there and been speaking with other content creators. Everybody's trying to see what we can get for you. But I got a dad joke for you before we get out of here. So thanks for watching. Appreciate all the likes, shares, comments, feedback, everything. So here is your reward. How do you organize a space party? You plan it. All right. Have a good rest of your Sunday, and I'll catch you in the next video.